In this age of cloud-native applications, compliance and security is non-negotiable. However, it is perceived as a roadblocker, which slows you down and slows down your innovation. So let's go ahead. My name is Poonam Lamba. I'm the product manager for GKE Compliance and Governance. Chris and I here, we will do a little bit of a role play. And for this session, I'll be wearing the product manager hat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Hendrich, Associate CTO for AppMod and Modern Applications at SADA. We are a Google Cloud Partner of the Year for 7 years running now. And I will wear the hat of Compliance Officer for this session. In our session, which will have about 30 minutes of content, we will talk about GKE Compliance, and then we will have enough time for Q&A and get you out in time for lunch. So to start with, Poonam, can you talk to us about why demand for Kubernetes compliance is growing?
Yeah, the demand for Kubernetes compliance is fueled by growing adoption of Kubernetes itself. So there was a recent CNCF survey of over 2,000 organizations where roughly 50% said that they are running all of their business critical applications on Kubernetes. Another 35% said they are running considerable workloads in production on Kubernetes. As the Kubernetes adoption is growing, so are the threats related to the compliance and security risks. This slide shows you the reality of what happened, the attacks that you had to face if you're running Kubernetes in production in 2023. This is not a what-if scenario. This is the reality. So the demand for Kubernetes compliance is fueled by growing adoption of Kubernetes, and because the threats related to compliance and security are growing as well.
Okay, so that has my attention. My teams, they're starting to adopt more and more Kubernetes, running more business critical workloads. So I maybe should look into that, but maybe next year. What are the implications of just ignoring compliance?
Ignoring compliance it can lead to domino effect, cascading effect, starting from project delays, which can lead to missing deadlines. It could lead to missed business opportunities. Failing compliance audits can lead to hefty fines for organizations, and it could lead to reputational loss. You could take years to recover from reputational loss due to compliance or security issues. So not meeting the compliance is not an option for organizations.
Good to know.
So, Chris, not meeting compliance is not an option. Can you explain how organizations are meeting the Kubernetes compliance today? Roughly the life cycle?
Sure. So a lot of times customers start with establishing a shared responsibility model. They start defining controls to meet certain industry or best practice standards. These will usually get created with multiple teams across the organization, and then these teams will work on that checklist of controls that then gets sent to the platform and administration team that then have to figure out how to implement those controls. So they have to take the controls, map them to, in our case, when we focus on Kubernetes, they map them to Kubernetes resources like namespaces, RBAC roles, network policies, etc. So one control could be to check that deployments have, create pods that are not running as root. Once you have these controls implemented, you then can gather evidence. You can, get insights, gather logs, data to understand, okay, how I'm actually faring against those standards. You identify things that you have to then fix to improve your compliance. So you send those findings back to your platform and application teams that then work on remediating these issues found. Of course, that's not where it ends. Compliance is an iterative journey. It is not a single destination. the world changes, new security issues are coming up, new compliance requirements are getting added, so you have to continuously run through that life cycle to stay compliant.
Wow, this seems harder than paddleboarding. So it's only 4 steps, but looks like at each step, a lot of teams have to interact. And then within that step, there are additional sub-steps that you have to follow in order to meet that one life cycle stage. It looks complicated from a process and implementation perspective. Are there any other difficulties in meeting compliance for Kubernetes?
Yeah, so what I've seen a lot is because of the nature of Kubernetes, right? We love it because of the agility, the scalability, et cetera, right? It lets us to improve our time of rolling out new changes or updates to applications, et cetera. But there can be a challenge for security and compliance, right? So a lot of things are getting missed when companies are just running a compliance report once or twice a year. Another issue is with existing systems that have been built with a lot of manual processes over time. It's very hard to just adopt quickly a new technology, well, newish nowadays, with like Kubernetes. A lot of the regulatory requirements can change, as I mentioned before, and when your company grows, you'll have to add more industry standards that you have to comply with. So you have to create more controls. You have to then figure out how those map to Kubernetes, et cetera. Very time intensive, and especially if you're kind of newish to Kubernetes, what I've found in a lot of organizations, there's still a big skill gap for that. So it makes it very challenging to implement those things. So the challenges that customers experience is, like, these challenges force customers to make some difficult decisions. They have to consider a lot of trade-offs, and I've seen that a lot of times leading to shortcuts that teams take. So there's a few trade-offs that we have to consider, like, do you sacrifice speed and agility and maybe a longer time to market for the sake of airtight security? Do you prioritize cost, potentially compromising on strict compliance? So Poonam, the question, can you achieve compliance without trade-offs?
The short answer is yes. We have looked into the pain points that customers are facing at a deeper level. We've done research, and we found that the only way to solve for Kubernetes compliance without having to do these trade-offs is by automating compliance and then seamlessly integrating compliance into your workflows. We've done exactly that and more, and I'm excited to announce GKE Compliance today, which is available in public preview. GKE Compliance simplifies compliance for you, leaving you to do more important work for your organizations, solving critical business problems, and focusing on innovation. Think of GKE Compliance as your compliance autopilot, which automates the industry standards and compiles and provides you a visibility into your entire compliance posture.
I like that, kind of compliance autopilot. So I'm familiar with security tools in GKE that exist, like binary authorization, security posture. Where does GKE compliance fit in that overall GKE security landscape?
So GKE security has 2 big building blocks. There is platform security, and then there is posture management on top of that. The GKE security posture management includes compliance and governance, vulnerability management, and threat detection. Governance enables you to bring your own policies or use the policies from the library that we built. You can start enforcing those policies to make sure that there is no drift in the state that you've specified and your current state of workloads. Vulnerability management does automatic vulnerability detection for the operating system layers as well as your applications. We also do automated remediation for known vulnerabilities. Threat detection, it's brand new. It's available in public preview as of today. And using threat detection, you can see the runtime threats that are happening in your environment, and you can mitigate them to make sure that you're not exposed to any attacks. So compliance squarely fits into the GKE security posture management offering, and this is the big picture for GKE security. GKE compliance makes compliance easy. We do the hard part. We look at the industry standards, we understand them, we map the controls to Kubernetes, we automate them, we compile a centralized view so you can start focusing on improving your compliance posture. Last but not the least, there is no learning curve. There is no build or buy decision. GKE compliance is built in. Let's look at some of the features of GKE compliance. It's automated, it's fully managed, gives you continuous compliance reports every 30 minutes. We also do provide you comprehensive coverage for standards. So what I mean by that is we'll look at your clusters, node pool, nodes, workloads, just to name a few things. And we provide you compliance at multiple levels, so you can quickly drill into those reports and figure out the problem areas, which reduces the time to understand your compliance posture and start fixing some of the compliance concerns. It's built in and fully integrated within GCP. So tooling like cloud operations and SEC will have fully managed integrations with those products as well. The value that you get by using GKE compliance is faster innovation. It saves time because your teams who had to work on making sure you're compliant have to interact differently. It increases visibility, which can lead to reduced risks and ultimately cost savings because it improves collaboration between multiple teams.
Nice. Okay, so that sounds very promising. Very interested. How do I get started? Can we take a look and can you show us what we can actually get today out of GKE compliance?
Absolutely. So let's jump into a quick demo. What I show you today is available for you as well, so you should be able to access it. All right. In order to access GKE compliance, you have to go to Kubernetes Engine, and then you will see the posture management grouping for the products. Under that, you click on compliance, and you will be taken to the compliance dashboard. There is also a concerns tab, which shows you detailed reports. But before we go into any details, let's look into how will you enable compliance. So you go to the setting cards, you click on select clusters, and then you will see compliance is not enabled on this one cluster, but let's see the clusters on which compliance is already enabled. So compliance is enabled on these 3 clusters and not enabled on this cluster. If I want to enable compliance, all I have to do is use the multi-select, select multiple clusters, and click on enable. Once you enable compliance, in 30 minutes, your dashboard and reports will be automatically populated. Let's look into the details of the dashboard. This dashboard is giving you the report for all the 3 clusters on which compliance is enabled. So the report is at fleet of clusters level, not for individual cluster. Overall compliance is the average compliance for all the standards that we evaluated across all the clusters that they got evaluated on. Non-compliant standards simply shows you out of the 3 compliance standards that we evaluated, 2 of them are non-compliant. which you can also see down here in this table. Non-compliant controls just gives you a count of unique controls that we evaluated across all the standards and which are non-compliant. Compliance concerns is the total number of concerns that are happening due to not meeting compliance. Non-compliant clusters, just showing you if you had 100 clusters, out of those, how many are non-compliant. In this demo, we only have 3, and 3 out of 3 of those clusters are non-compliant. Non-compliant resources is a count of resources which have some compliance concern. And this could include your clusters, node pools, nodes, workloads, or other configurations that exist within Kubernetes, within GKE. Now let's go and do a deeper dive into one of these reports. Actually, we'll look into every report. So let's start with PSS baseline. You can see PSS baseline, we are 100% compliant. There are 10 controls that we evaluated across the 3 clusters. All of them are passing, and hence you are 100% compliant for PSS baseline. There are no concerns, no resources are failing, and no constraints are failing. So for one compliance control, it is possible that we have more than one checks that we have to do to make sure that you're compliant. So you can have 10 controls, but more than 10 constraints to check the compliance for those controls. And last but not the least, it is the number of clusters which are failing for a given control. Let's look at something more complex, which is PSS restricted. And you will see for PSS restricted compliance, we are 17% compliant. We evaluated 6 controls, and only one of those controls is passing on all 3 clusters. So now let's start doing a deeper dive and understand what's happening here. I'm going to filter the report for consumer banking retail cluster. So this cluster, again, has 17% compliance. Only one of the controls is passing. We can see 5 concerns, but only 1 resource is failing. So that narrows it down. There is only 1 resource which is causing 5 concerns. So let's look into one of these concerns, which is, I'm just picking run as non-root. I'm going to click on this. It shows me more details. It shows me what run as root means, which is security context, run as non-root flag should be true. I can go into affected resources. I know my Nginx deployment is actually not meeting this particular control. And there is only 1 resource which is failing and generating like 5 compliance concerns. So I know all of those 5 concerns are in my Nginx application. And I can go back and make sure I can fix that application for these concerns. Similarly, I can go and look at another cluster. And you will see that for that cluster, there are 12 concerns. But all of those 12 concerns are coming from 1 control that is failing. It's taking, all right, let me just filter it again. Yeah, so you can see the compliance for this cluster is at 83%, much higher than the other one. Only one of these controls is failing, which is the seccom profile is not defined accurately. So I will go into the details of that particular control, and I can look at my affected resources. So there are 12 different applications which are not setting the seccom profile properly. So by looking into these details, I can start doing my remediation. Now let's look at the GKE CIS benchmark. So we published the new GKE CIS 1.5 benchmark in December 2023 timeframe. And this report is actually showing the evaluation against the latest GKE CIS benchmark. So we do have a refresh of the benchmark that is coming in June. And at that time, we will be adding more reports to make sure that you have up-to-date visibility into your GKE CIS benchmark. So for this benchmark, overall compliance across the 3 clusters is 67%. There are 94 concerns, 22 resources are failing, bunch of constraints are failing, as well as none of the clusters are GKE CIS benchmark compliant. So I'm going to drill into one of these sections. I'm going to pick policies. And you can see for each section also I have a compliance percentage. So let's go into the network policies, 4.3. 4.3 has 2 controls, 4.3.1 and 4.3.2. And you can see that one of those controls is at 0% compliance, the other one is at 100%. So overall compliance at this section level is 50%. Now let's look into the details of why this is failing. So the control actually requires you to enable network policy for the cluster. And then I can drill down and see the affected resources. In this case, it is not a deployment, right? It is a cluster which is not meeting the control, which has not enabled the network policy. So all I have to do to fix this is go and edit the cluster configuration, or if you're using Terraform, change the configuration and reapply the Terraform. And similarly, I can go and filter things for each cluster for GKE CIS benchmark as well. And so let's do that for one of these clusters. Go into policies again, and you can see this cluster is one of the clusters which is not meeting the network policy enablement control. Similarly, you can also look at other things. For example, this cluster is meeting the binary authorization enablement. So you have multiple levels of reporting, and all of this basically helps you drill down and find the problem areas and start improving the compliance posture. This is all for the demo.
Awesome. I love it. Super easy. It looks like it's really super easy to get started. Just a couple of clicks and you're ready to go. Now, if I tell my platform team to start using GKE compliance, what do I have to worry about? Is it going to do anything to my clusters? Do I have to worry that it suddenly, I enable it in my production environment, just goes down?
I'm glad you asked. For compliance, we do not install anything on your clusters. So we do not change any configuration, do a deployment. We do not impact any of your reliability goals or service level objectives that you may have for that cluster. Compliance is evaluated outside of your clusters. So we run a job in Borg, and all you have to do is enable compliance, and after that, we do the reporting every 30 minutes, and we manage the whole thing for you.
Sure, okay. So I also saw I think 3 security standards, right, that we were able to get insights on. What is the plan for additional industry standards, right, that I probably have to adopt maybe throughout this year? And also, what else is coming in the near future to GKE compliance?
Yeah, so for public preview, we have started, we focused on the foundational compliance. You will see that a lot of controls from PSS and GKE CIS benchmark are also included in other compliance standards like NIST. So short answer to your question is we have continued investment in compliance. We wanted to start with foundational compliance because it helps you improve your security and compliance posture. And throughout the year, we will be introducing more standards. So you will see more entries in the report. And in addition to more standards, we will also introduce compliance trends, because we understand compliance is a journey. Oftentimes, a compliance officer has compliance goals for a financial year. So you will be able to see how you are trending towards the compliance for a standard. So that's compliance trends. It's near-term roadmap, so these things you will see coming out really soon. In addition to this, we will be taking compliance to GA in like 1 quarter, And as part of that, you will be able to enable compliance using Terraform. G-Cloud support will be baked in. And we will also add, during the enablement, you'll be able to select individual standards. So that way you can reduce noise. If your organization is not interested in certain standards, you do not have to get compliance evaluation for those standards as well. So there's a lot that is going to come out. We have a lot of investment in compliance. This is just a short-term roadmap that I can share, but we have a lot of things that will be coming out in compliance.
I like it. I like the compliance trend so I can show my bosses how well I'm doing with my job. Of course, I want to make sure that we're actually going up. So once I get my insights and I remediate some of the issues that we see, I want to make sure that we stay at least with the ones that were already implemented. I want to make sure that we don't get worse with compliance and introduce the same issues again. You mentioned something about governance earlier, like what can I do to actually enforce, and you talked about enforcement, so what can I do to enforce these compliance standards now, these constraints that I've figured out?
That's a great question. So if you want to make sure that there is no drift that happens in your compliance posture, you can start enforcing either the entire standard or individual controls. So we already have an offering called as Policy Controller. And Policy Controller comes with more than 14 policy bundles, which include best practices, which include industry standards, as well as Kubernetes-related standards as well. So if we just focus on the compliance offering that I just talked about and not talk about all the other bundles which are available for PSS baseline, PSS restricted, and the GKE CIS benchmark, we already have policy bundles that we've published. You can download those bundles. You can customize those bundles. You can start enforcing the whole standard, or you can just pick and choose the controls that matter to your organization, and you can start enforcing them. And again, Policy Controller is the dashboard as well as enablement. Everything happens at a fleet level. So you don't have to look into the details of individual cluster. You can do reporting, dashboarding, everything at a fleet level.
Nice.
Start your journey right away. So you saw, to enable compliance, all you have to do is go to the dashboard, which is accessible, which should be available for you to use. And you can just enroll your clusters, enable compliance. Compliance is included within GKE Enterprise offering. So if you're an enterprise user, it is already available to you. There is no additional cost. If you're not a GKE Enterprise user, you can still use a 90-day free trial for GKE Enterprise Edition. And in addition to compliance, you can also try out threat detection, Policy Controller, config, and other capabilities that are part of the GKE Enterprise offering. Well, since you're here, we have some offers that are available to next attendees. You can scan this code to get to a page where you can see the offers for yourself. Next slide, please. Can you go back?
Yeah. Sorry. C2 people.
Right, next slide.
Good to go? Okay.
These are some of the other sessions that we recommend. Since you're interested in GKE compliance, we recommend Ops 200, 215. You can also say hi to Chris at SADA booth, which is 1110, and have deeper conversations about the work that SADA is doing.
Just go in the expo hall, you go in, look to the right, you'll see our booth right there.
Yeah, next slide. Your feedback is appreciated. Let us know if there's anything we can do better for our session. If you want to talk to a GKE or a serverless PM or a user researcher, you can reach out to us. Just scan this code, fill out a form, and we'll we'll make sure that we reach out to you and make sure we have a conversation about your concerns. And Kubernetes turns 10. Yay! Yeah, it goes back to in the beginning of the session, we talked about Kubernetes adoption is growing. It's still just 10. So it talks about the dominance of Kubernetes in the industry. Thank you.